What's up, guys? Today I'm joined by the amazing Jamal Armstrong from Niner Talk with Jasper and Jamal. How you doing tonight, Jamal?
I'm doing really well. It's good to be on with you. I get to finally have a conversation with the great Amin the Dream, the legend. I've seen you in multiple spaces. I've seen you on different chats here on YouTube, and we've talked a little bit in Twitter DMs as well too to set up a time where we could come on. And it's a pleasure. It's an honor to come on with you. And last thing I'll say, I got to say that your intro, that's tight. I like your intro. That was really
Yep.
good.
Shout out to
I don't
Jesse
know
for
who
that
made it, but that was
intro.
good.
Yeah, shout out to Jesse for the intro because he made me that intro. So shout out to Jesse.
I'm gonna have to
But
hit
let's
him
jump right
up.
into it. Let's jump right into it. Starting off with what is the 49ers' biggest position of need?
Ooh, the heavy hitters. The biggest position of need. That's a tough question. And I think I'm gonna go offensive line, and I'm gonna say it changes depending on what happens in free agency. Because you have to if I look at a Laken Tomlinson, if he signs back, that means the left side of our line with Trent Williams, with Laken Tomlinson, that's set up. That's good for the foreseeable future. But if he doesn't come back, then you're looking at left guard. You're looking at potentially right guard as well too, depending on what happens. Maybe they'll go into camp looking for Jalen Moore, Aaron Banks, and Daniel Brunskill to try to battle it out for that right guard position. So if he doesn't come back, you're looking at left guard and right guard. If Alex Mack doesn't come back, you're looking at a center as well, whether it be in free agency, we go out and get a guy like a Ryan Jensen from Tampa Bay, or if they go into the draft and pick up, a center with maybe their second overall pick, or if they trade, maybe they want to trade back into the first round with the picks that we have to go and grab a center there as well. So there's multiple positions, and that probably sounds like a cop out, but I would say offensive line has the offensive line as a whole has the most glaring holes right now, and we don't even know at this point what we can expect from Mike McGlinchey as well too. We think he can come back. We think he'll be able to play, but at the same time, that injury has been career-ending for some players as well too. And then for other people, it changes just their career trajectory. And so, for him being a high draft pick, I think he's more of an average player. He's really good in on run defending as well, or run coverage, but pass blocking is not where it's not been his strongest suit. I think he's a bit better than people give him credit for, but I still think he's about league average when it comes to that. Whereas in the running scheme, he's really good. So we don't even know what to expect from him. I think he should be starting this next year, and Tom Compton's a free agent. So there's a lot of question marks on the offensive line in general outside of Trent Williams. And that makes Laken Tomlinson a bigger priority in free agency. But it also means guys like Daniel Brunskill, Aaron Banks, Jalen Moore have opportunities to step up, as well as we'll know a lot more depending on what the Niners do in free agency as well too. So long-winded answer, the biggest position, I would say it has to be pretty much the whole O-line outside of Trent Williams and potentially Laken Tomlinson.
Yep. Now, last season, obviously in the off season, I said it was the cornerback position, right? Because we had Verrett, but then obviously Verrett went down. Who knows what happened with the cornerback situation? And then Verrett did go down, and then obviously we started Josh Norman for a certain period of time. We started Ambry also nearing the end of the season, and then Emmanuel Mosley also is pretty solid for us. So
Right.
this season, I was definitely worried about the cornerback position, but the cornerbacks, now obviously it's not like amazing, right? But it's still serviceable. It was definitely better than I thought it was coming into the season. But if you look at this season, it's definitely the offensive line. Right now, with Laken Tomlinson being a free agent, who knows if he'll re-sign with the team? We don't know if he's going to re-sign with the team. Who knows if another team gives him a bigger contract and he wants to, even, like I said this on my show, my last show, that even, another team that might not even be a contender, if they're giving him more
Yeah.
money, he might want to go to that team because they're just giving him more money than the Niners are. So Laken Tomlinson, we'll see what happens with that whole situation. But if Laken Tomlinson is gone, then the O-line is in big trouble, especially if Alex Mack retires, because who knows how many years Alex Mack still has left in the tank.
Oh
So
yeah.
when you look at the O-line position, the only really position on the O line that you could say is certified and that's 100% guaranteed that I necessarily and a lot of fans aren't worried about is Trent Williams, right, which is the left tackle position. But every other position you could look at with right tackle with Mike McGlinchey, how well is he going to be? How well will he perform? Is he going to be 100% coming off that injury that he had? Obviously, with the right guard position, Daniel Brunskill, are you going to bring Daniel Brunskill? Is he your long-term right guard? Who knows what will happen with Aaron Banks? You drafted him in the second round. Will Aaron Banks play for you next year? Will he be your starting right guard instead of Daniel Brunskill? And then with the center position, like I said, with Alex Mack, who knows if he'll retire this offseason or what his whole situation is. So if Alex Mack retires, you're gonna have to go address that position either in free agency, which I don't think they'll do it in free agency because I don't know that many guys that are out there right now center position, and then also you're gonna have to pay them big bucks, center big bucks. So I think if Alex Mack does retire, you're gonna have to address it in the draft, which I think they might address it in the draft. One of their later round picks. Maybe the pick that they got with the Mike McDaniel, when Mike McDaniel went to Miami. So they might, use that pick on a center. They might use, one of their fourths or fifths on the center. But I think that center position definitely has to be addressed sooner or later, especially with Alex Mack possibly retiring. So when you just look at the whole offensive line as a whole, there's a lot of, needs and holes that you have to fill. And there's a lot of uncertainties on that offensive line. So if there's one position that I would say that, is the biggest position of need for the 49ers, it would definitely be the offensive line.
Yeah, and it's scary, right? At this point in time on today, there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of things up in the air on what could or couldn't happen. And right now, if we're going to be honest, just talking about the offensive line, just that unit, it's a lot riding on whatever we can get done with Laken Tomlinson. It's a lot riding on if Alex Mack retires or not. Those two things, I think, while it's not the final pieces, those are two drastic pieces we need for at least this next season. Even if we draft a center and Alex Mack, retires next year, ideally, I would like that. If he's going to retire, I'd like him to come back this year. We bring in an interior offensive lineman. Maybe he's playing right guard or something this year, or he's backing up whoever ends up starting at right guard, and then they have that time over the course of the season to learn from him, to learn from Alex Mack, to be able to work with a Trey Lance, especially because you have a young quarterback as well too. Like, you want to keep your young quarterback safe. You want to keep him off the ground. The nice thing is about Trey Lance, he does have the ability to use his legs. Now, he's not Lamar Jackson, and he's not going to just run by everyone because he has the ability to do that. But he can get you out of some trouble. Like, he can do that. And so that's going to be some of the difference between him and a Jimmy Garoppolo. But, I mean, you've touched on it. I've touched on it. The 49ers are going to have to come correct with the money, especially for Laken Tomlinson. This is a guy that we traded for in 2017, started his first 2 years, back with the Detroit Lions. I personally think he's improved every single year. And, spoiler alert, I'm sure if the people in the audience can't tell, it sounds like we're both really high on Laken Tomlinson. We both want him to come back. So that's one of the free agents. It sounds like both of us, we agree he should come back. Well, with that being said, he's also played 100% of the snaps for the last 3 years. And 4 years ago, he played 97%. So he's a consistent guy. He's consistently on the field.
Yep.
Go ahead.
That's rare for a Niners player, right? Because we as Niners fans, we've seen all our guys pretty much get hurt. Sometimes, I think it was 2020 where we had almost 20 players on IR or something like that. So when with Niners players, if you can play all your games a full season and you're a starter, yeah, that's definitely a bonus.
Absolutely. And I had mentioned this as well, too. I was on another podcast earlier today, and I said the same thing. I said, you know what? I'm probably mentioning this because I'm a Niner fan, and I might be a little scarred by injuries, but that's also important because of the camaraderie he has with Trent Williams. Those two guys are close. And if those two guys are close, the familiarity they have within the offensive scheme that we already run, having at least that left side there locked down, to me, that's really important. I think you can get by. The 49ers have shown they can get by with a okay right tackle. I think Tom Compton's worse than Mike McGlinchey. That's just me. And so in saying that, you can get by with a young corner or a young right tackle who's potentially better at maybe run blocking than he is at pass protection. I think you can get by with someone who's better at run blocking than pass protection. The 49ers have shown that. But like we said earlier, Tom Compton's a free agent. I don't necessarily know if they're going to bring him back. They probably want to try to at least upgrade that position too. So will they bring Compton back? I think he's like 32. Maybe they'll go someone a little bit younger who can provide a similar sort of, or even more of an upside, really. So there's a lot that has to happen. I'm with David. I'm with you, David. We do need a younger center. That's what we were just talking about. We know he's 36. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And it's better to draft a center this year so that he can learn. If Alex Mack does play this season, it's better that he can learn and, learn from Alex Mack this season instead of, drafting a center next year and then he has to play and he won't have that experience of, even if he plays right this year, even if we do draft, a offensive lineman and he plays this year and then we switch him and transition him to center next year.
Right.
That would also be fine with me, but I definitely think center is also a position like that we definitely should address in this draft. And I think the Niners will address it in this draft. And then also, like, speaking of Trey Lance, you need a good offensive line to protect Trey Lance, right? Like, obviously, with a mobile quarterback, mobile quarterback can do a lot, unlike, your typical pocket passer without a good old line, right? Mobile quarterback can escape the pocket, can extend plays and things like that. But you don't want Trey Lance getting hurt behind a bad offensive line. Like, you just don't want that, especially in his first year. If if Alex Mack retires and we can't re-sign Lakin, and then who knows what McGlinchey will be next year, right?
It's one of the worst things for a young quarterback, especially young, because these are the formative years. These are the years that help decide what he's gonna be down the road. If he's already seeing those ghosts, like Sam Darnold said a couple years ago, if he's seeing those things early on, guess what? That's stunting his growth in the passing game. That's stunting his growth even in the running game. If he's getting concerned about possibly getting hit, he's thinking about the pass rush, especially in the passing game. He's thinking about the pass rush getting home. He has more opportunities to potentially get hurt. And at that point, what I think an underrated point is players that have the ability to run but want to throw the ball first. Well, if they're getting hit, they're going to probably start looking down more and taking off sooner than staying in the pocket. You want your quarterback to be able to stay in the pocket, deliver the ball. Sometimes that means you're going to get hit. We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo, for all the ups and downs that he has the ability to stay sturdy, stay stout in that pocket and deliver a strike. I've seen him miss as well too, but I have to give him credit. I've seen Aaron Donald bearing down on him, and he's able to convert a tight window third down as well too. That's signs of a high level quarterback. I want to see that from my young quarterback too. But if he's getting pressure in his face that much early on, guess what? Some of that stuff starts becoming habits. You're starting to move around out of the pocket. You're getting a little, you're not letting the routes develop. I don't want to see that. You need a good O-line. And in particular with the center, you want a center who knows the offense. And I've always said a tight end is one of the young quarterback's best friends, but it's really the center. It's the center and the quarterback that make that offense not work, but they make it go. So, sometimes it's the center who's changing plays at the line of scrimmage and he's turning around and talking to the quarterback and vice versa. So that center to quarterback relationship is super important.
Manning and Jeff Saturday, kind of that
relationship
of, Manning would go on the bench and, they would work out, they would figure out blitzes and things like that. So
absolutely. It's really important.
Yeah. It's really important. And like at the Niners, obviously we talked about how Trey Lance and how it affected him on the field. But what about his mental his mentally and his confidence, right? Like you don't have a good offensive line and Trey's getting hit and Trey's throwing interceptions and Trey isn't playing well.
Right.
Think about how much criticism he's going to receive, right? And as a rookie, right, like getting that criticism and like one thing I didn't like, kind of like reminds me of one thing I didn't like what Miami did, where Miami in certain situations when Tua's rookie year, they would bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick in certain game situations.
Yeah.
Kind of Miami telling Tua, hey, we don't trust you in this situation. We're going to go with Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? So, and what do you think that did to Tua's confidence? Like that didn't make him that made him lose confidence. That's basically, their organization telling him, yo, we don't have 100%
full trust in you. Right. Even through this year at times. We're a couple of years into his career now, and even now, and I'm not a Dolphins fan. You aren't either, but we watch football and you can see that there's a little concern there, like to fully commit to him. That's not a good thing. It seems like Mike McDaniel's going to be all in. It seems like that anyway.
It seems like it, yep. But you don't want to do that to Trey Lance where he's losing his confidence week by week and his confidence is slowly declining week by week. So you don't want to do that to Trey
Right.
Lance. Like you said, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks be with bad offensive lines, really can't produce. Like we've seen Patrick Mahomes behind the
Right.
bad offensive line in the Super Bowl, and he couldn't do nothing. Right? Even Patrick Mahomes, like
Right.
he tried his best, diving on the floor and throwing it. And, Mahomes is obviously special, but like even Mahomes
Right.
really couldn't do anything behind a bad offensive line. So if Mahomes can't do anything behind a bad offensive line, and he's in some people's books, even my books, the best quarterback in football, what do you expect?
Right.
Trey Lance to do behind a bad offensive line? Like, and we've seen it also this year with a bunch of rookies, right? Like Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys have been struggling for a lot of reasons, but also a big reason that they are struggling is because the offensive line can't protect them. They
Right.
can't protect Trevor Lawrence. The offensive line can't protect Zach Wilson. So the offensive line is a huge position of need, and the Niners should definitely address it. Not just not just for their sake, but also to help Trey Lance out a lot.
Absolutely. And just the last thing I'll say on this, I know you want to probably get to the next part. This is why football is the ultimate team sport. That right there, you said it very clearly. Patrick Mahomes is arguably the greatest quarterback in football right now. By greatest, he's arguably the best quarterback in football right now. Him, Josh Allen, both those guys. And it's nice what you can do off schedule for sure. It's nice to be able to extend a play, absolutely. But you need a solid O-line. And you pointed out very, very well. That Super Bowl, that man, he ran for, I think, like 80 plus yards behind the line of scrimmage in that game because he had so much pressure in his face behind the line of scrimmage. So it says right there.
Sideline to sideline trying to find someone. You would see him, running for his life. So
Right.
If Mahomes can't do it, how do you expect, necessarily Trey Lance to do it? Now, obviously, I'm not gonna, Trey Lance. Obviously, if he does do it, we've seen Burrow do it, but at the same time, there's like I would strongly say there's like 80% of the quarterbacks behind a bad offensive line really can't, do much. So
Right.
Well, moving on to the next topic. We obviously know yesterday Mike McDaniel, I think 2 days ago, Mike McDaniel did get announced to be the Dolphins head coach. And I was definitely sad, seeing him go. And, Mike McDaniel's had obviously had a lot of, funny and enjoyable press conferences. And obviously he's a huge part of our success in the run game for the Niners. Like, obviously we talk about Kyle Shanahan as an offensive genius, but Mike McDaniel, he's obviously as Niners fans, we give him credit, but there's not a lot of, media people around the league that give him enough credit, and now he finally gets an opportunity to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and he finally gets a chance to prove himself. But what are your thoughts on this whole Mike McDaniel to become the Miami Dolphins head coach, and how big of a loss is this for the 49ers in that offense?
Great question. I'm happy. I'm really happy for Mike McDaniel. This is a guy that's been with the 49ers, not the 49ers. This is a guy that's been with either one of the Shanahans, Mike Shanahan or Kyle Shanahan, since 2005. I mean, he spent some time with the Texans with Gary Kubiak after leaving the Broncos with Mike Shanahan. That started in 2006. This is a guy that's been a running backs coach, a wide receiver coach. Obviously, here with the Niners, he was the run game coordinator. And then this past year, the offensive coordinator. Now, we know he wasn't the one calling plays, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything, because leading up to any game throughout the week, through the offseason, it's been said that he's some of the mastermind behind some of the run looks that we get. He's the mastermind behind a lot of the run coverages that we see, and the creativity. He's considered one of the more creative guys. So I'm excited for him and the opportunity. Like I said, he's been with the Shanahan system itself for like 15 years. So he's definitely going to be taking a lot from what he knows in this system as a Shanahan disciple with him. And I'm happy for him. The one thing I'd say though is I hope he's given a legitimate chance, because we've seen obviously in recent days, not even a week, in the recent few days, Brian Flores apparently wasn't given. He was told to, tank. He was told to tank it, and they would pay him to tank. So that's not the sign of a good, well-run franchise. That's a sign of a franchise that wants to lose games, I guess, to pick a certain quarterback or whatever they want. And it's a sign of they don't have their mind or their hearts in the right spot. And I don't know if it's just, the owner that's saying that. So as much as I'm happy for Mike McDaniel, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny around the franchise just because of what's come out in the past few days. Now, I think he has the ability to be able to put forth a good unit out there. That defense, the Miami Dolphins defense is really solid. I believe they started out this season like 1-7, and they were able to turn their season around. And that was really on the back of that defense. And we said this a couple of minutes ago. This is a team that needs to decide if they're going to commit to Tua or not. And my thought here is, let's say he commits to Tua for just this year and it just doesn't work out, or Tua gets hurt, 3 times throughout the course of the year and he's only able to play 11 games, 10 games, something like that. Well, he's not the one that drafted Tua. So are they going to give him the leeway to say, you know what, we tried it out with this guy. I'm kind of done with that. I want to go to the draft and I want to bring in whatever quarterback's going to come out. Bryce Young, DJ Uiagalelei. Maybe they want to go out and get one of these, high-level quarterbacks this next year. Are they going to give him that leeway? Are they going to give him that time? That's the question I have for some of these franchises that haven't done well in years or don't have a good regime around them. How patient are they going to be? First of all, I didn't think that Brian Flores deserved to be fired. He gave them 2 winning seasons, and he's honestly a really good coach. So that's why I question what they're going to do. I think Mike McDaniel has the ability to be a good coach. I think he's jumping into it now at the right time. There's a lot of mystery behind him because we don't know exactly what he does. Now, we as 49ers fans know a lot of what he does, but we don't know everything. We think we know some stuff. Are they going to give him time? Are they going to set him up to be successful? And not only him, are they going to set up the team? Are they going to be able to draft right? They've brought in a lot of offensive linemen over the past 3 to 4 years, and they haven't worked out very well so far. Maybe a new coach, a new scheme will come in and change that. I don't know. Maybe. But are they going to give him a legitimate chance? That's kind of my question. My question is really not on the coach, even though it's his first time. It's on the patience of ownership. It's on the patience of the fan base. Are they going to run this man out? Which is crazy to say considering he's a first-time head coach. And my questions aren't with him more than they are with the fan base. Or not the fan base, the organization. That's not a good starting spot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad he's getting, an opportunity, right? Because Mike McDaniel has had almost over 15 years experience in the NFL, right? So he's had that experience. And Mike McDaniel, obviously, the organization isn't the greatest, and we've obviously heard about how Brian Flores, he got paid to tank and stuff like that. And I mean, who knows what happened with Mike McDaniel his time in Miami? But when I heard about that whole situation and he got paid to tank, that's stupid to me, right? Because the fundamental thing about sports is you play to win. You play to win each and every game. You play to win all the time, every time, right? Mm-hmm. You don't play to lose. You play to win. And players also, they come in every week, every practice having the mentality of we're trying to win football games on Sunday. Not, it's okay if we try our best on Sunday. Hopefully it goes in our favor. No, every football player wants to win on Sundays, and that's what they have the mentality. That's the mentality that they have coming into every practice and every game. So obviously if, that wasn't a great sign or a great thing, but I'm glad Mike McDaniel's definitely getting opportunity, and we'll see what he does in Miami, right? And some people are even calling him the next Sean McVay, which I don't know if I could say that yet, but Mike McDaniel's definitely has the experience, and who knows what will happen with Tua. I mean, he didn't draft Tua. It was actually, I think it's Chris Greer. I forgot his name, right? Chris
Greer, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. But he drafted Tua Tagovailoa, and I remember there was news reports coming out that Brian Flores wanted Herbert and Chris Greer wanted Tua Tagovailoa. And if
they had Herbert with Flores, he'd still have a job.
If they had Herbert, yeah, Brian Flores would probably still have a job. But Mike McDaniels, I feel like he has a lot of he has high expectations this year, right? And let's say Mike McDaniels, he gets a fair opportunity. He has high expectations because Brian Flores had 2 winning seasons and he got fired. And if you look at this season, Brian Flores and that Miami Dolphins team was 1-7. And to be 9-8, that just shows you something about the players that the Miami Dolphins have, but also Brian Flores just as a coach himself.
Right.
So
that's how you build a culture. That's what people talk about.
Yeah, exactly, right? So
and they let that guy go.
Yeah, and they let him go, right? And I think if he didn't have those lawsuits, he would probably gotten a job this offseason. He would probably gotten a head coaching job. And I think one job he probably would have gotten, it was the Houston job if he didn't, have those allegations. And he even said that also, if I didn't have those allegations, he probably would have gotten that job. But Mike McDaniels has high expectations this year. If they give him a fair opportunity, I mean, he has high expectations. You probably have to make the playoffs if you're Mike McDaniels, and if you're the Dolphins head coach, you probably have to make the playoffs this year.
Man.
Because if they let go a guy who was 9-8 and had 2 winning seasons, and the Miami Dolphins, like before those last 2 seasons, they were a joke. Minka Patrick wanted out. Nobody wanted to play in Miami. Like, they were a joke. And
I mean, Minka Fitzpatrick came out and said that he was getting used in the wrong position. So you're right. They were absolutely a joke. They weren't using players the right way.
And Brian Flores turned it around, and he went 9-8. He had 2 winning seasons, right? So Mike McDaniels, like, you have high expectations this year, because if the Miami Dolphins don't make the playoffs, like, I don't necessarily think they should fire Mike McDaniel if they don't make it to the playoffs, but they possibly could, because if they fired Brian Flores for having 2 winning seasons and just falling short and turning the Miami Dolphins around and building a culture, what's going to happen if you possibly end up having a worse record?
Right.
Don't make the playoffs and don't make the playoffs like Brian Flores. So there's high expectations for, Mike McDaniel, and Mike McDaniel, like, has to perform with this team, and Mike McDaniel and this team, the Dolphins, had to perform this year, because, like I said, if they let go of Brian Flores when he had 2 back-to-back winning seasons, who knows what will happen with Mike McDaniel?
I don't think that they'll fire him after 1 year. It's not out of the question, though. The fact that I'm saying that is crazy, because you hired a new coach. Yeah. He's a first-time head coach. It's not like he's inheriting the Kansas City Chiefs with the Patrick Mahomes, with the Travis Kelce. You're not inheriting a high-flying offense. I do think that they have a good defense right now that can still improve in some areas. You've got 2 really good corners on the outside. Those guys are really good. And I think that you like a Jimmy Garoppolo, you can win with a Tua Tagovailoa. He's not usually the reason or the full reason that you win, but you can win games with those guys. How do the 49ers like to do it? Time of possession, run the ball pretty consistently, stay ahead of the sticks. You can do that with him.
Yeah, expect to see Miami run the football way
absolutely
more than they already do. Like Myles Gaskin, those guys are going to get a bigger workload, because when you have a guy like Mike McDaniel coming from the Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan scheme and system.
Exactly.
We know how much Kyle and Mike like to run the football. Mike Shanahan used Terrell Davis basically to sort of win him a Super Bowl. And you look at Kyle Shanahan, who loves to run the football. And it's like Mike McDaniel, that Miami offense, to run the football a lot. I think I lost Jamal. Well, we're waiting for Jamal to come back, but in the meantime, let's jump right into the next topic. I know I already discussed this previously in my other show. Oh, okay, he's back. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, my internet.
I discussed this in my previous show, but I want to get your thoughts on this. This has been a controversial topic for a couple of weeks ago, and it's still a little bit of a controversial topic, but did Jaquiski Tartt's dropped interception cost the Niners the game?
No, I don't think it cost the Niners the game. I think it's a team effort, absolutely. And some people say, "Oh, that's a cop out," or you hear that all the time. But Jaquiski Tartt isn't the only reason the Rams went 11 for 18 on third down. That's 60%. Jaquiski Tartt's not the only reason the Rams had the ball for 35 minutes, 39 seconds. The Niners only had it 15 minutes left. That's not only Jaquiski Tartt's fault. We still held them to 20 points. So that offense could have done a little bit better as well, too. Now, did it play a role in us losing that game? Absolutely. We would have got the ball back about midfield. Who knows if we would have gotten a touchdown on that drive? It's possible we could have found a way to come away with 3, though. And on that drive, they did end up driving down the field and scoring. I think it was a field goal that drive. I think it was. No, that might have been Kupp's second touchdown on that drive. I forgot, but they got points on that drive. And you can argue either just before that on the 49ers drive where we got stopped after gaining 9 yards with Elijah Mitchell. You could argue that flipped the game, or you could argue the dropped interception right there also flipped the game. Or you could say that both of those played a huge role and the momentum was fully on the Rams side. So no, I don't think it was only Kwaski Talk's fault. While we have solid cornerbacks, the corners were giving up a lot of comebacks, not only to Cup, but I mean, OBJ had 100 plus yards. He had like 113 yards. Yeah. I think Cooper Kupp had like 142. Those two guys together, they combined for like 20 catches, 200 some yards, and the 2 touchdowns. But that's the thing. Like, you can give up yards all day. When it really mattered, we were tough in the end. We were tough in the red zone. Yes, they did get the 2 touchdowns by Cooper Kupp. I'd say the offense should be able to overcome that. And I think that it's not just the offense. It's that's why it's a team effort. It also comes back to Kyle, who I'm a Shanahan stan, man. I like him a lot. I think he's a great coach. But I also think this is a game where the quarterback was handcuffed by his coach because coach doesn't fully trust him. But I also think Shanahan is handcuffed by Jimmy Garoppolo as well. So it's both sides. He got tight.
Yeah, I feel like how Shanahan's a little bit handcuffed with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Because, like, if you look at other teams, right? Like, the Niners obviously are a running football team, but, like, if you look at other teams in certain situations, like, other teams in certain situations will throw the ball with their quarterback, like, in that game, right? Like, on a 3rd and 7, most teams will run the football. Now, some people will say, oh, the Niners are a running football team. They'll probably run the football on 3rd and 7, but if he had a quarterback that he trusted and that he knows that can make that play, why would Kyle go against throwing the football on a 3rd and 7, right? Because that's probably a safer option and a better option than running the football on a 3rd and 7. So, but no, just Kloski Tart's interception definitely didn't cost the Niners this football game. There was a lot of other factors. My brother's knocking on my door. My little brother, he's knocking on my door. But
it's all good.
There was a lot of other factors, There's a lot of other factors that went into this game. Now, if Kloski Tart made that play, would it have helped? Yeah, it would definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, I know you brought up amazing stats, but the Niners in 2019, I hate to bring up this analogy in the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl hurt like hell. But the Niners got an interception with 11:40 left on the clock. The Niners only went on a 2-minute drive and gave the Chiefs the ball back with 9:40 left on the clock. And then the Chiefs went down and scored and had like this 3-minute drive. So even if Hart made that interception, would the Niners have scored on offense, number one? Would the Niners have drained enough clock? Because we've seen, like I said, like that example, the Niners got an interception. How much did they score? No. And how much time did they run off the clock? 2 minutes. Right? So that interception could have also happened in the NFC Championship game. Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't have helped, but there's a lot of other factors in this game that you could look at, like how the Rams converted on 3rd down, 60% on 3rd down, like how the offense had like 3 drives where they were on the Rams' freaking 50-yard line,
and we still punted.
And they couldn't get field goals. Not even like we're not expecting you to score touchdowns every drive, right? That would have been nice. Like, not even field goals. They punted like 3 times in the Rams' 50, and I'm like, all right, like, yeah, if you punt it like 3 times in the Rams 50, it's gonna be hard to win football games. Like, you have to convert on those 50. If you're on the Rams 50, you couldn't even convert once, right? Like, in some places, yeah, they did get field goals, but 3 times you couldn't. So there's a lot of other factors in this game that you could look at, but it's definitely not all on just Kwaski Tart. And that's the thing.
No.
Like basketball, football, it's teams games. They're team games, right? Now, basketball is a little bit different because in basketball, you could say one player can win you the basketball game. Like, if a player takes over the game and, scores all the points, yeah, that's hard to do. But in football, on the other hand, football is the ultimate team game because it takes defense, it takes every position group, it takes everybody as a collective to play well to win football games, right? Like, nobody can do it by themselves. Like, you can't expect the quarterback to catch the ball and throw the ball and play defensive end. So you know what I'm saying? But football is the ultimate team game. So it wasn't on one player, but would that Tart interception definitely have helped? Yeah, it definitely would have. But at the same time, there's still no guarantee that it would have won.
Right. If there's one thing I could add to that part in terms of just the analogy of applying it to basketball, I would agree with you if you're saying momentum plays a role in it. That you can get momentum in basketball being down 20 points, 15 points, and like you were saying, Curry can get hot or Clay can get hot, something like that, and it changes the course of the game. In the span of 3 minutes, you might be able to score 15 points and come back and you're within 5 points. and then boom, that changes the whole momentum of the game. Warriors end up closing the game out, win the game. Like that can happen. So momentum can for sure can for sure shift. Now the same thing with Jaworski Tart. Would that interception have caused a spark to the offense to say, oh man, prime position here. We gotta come away with points. Maybe that gets into the what if territory that we're both talking about. Based on what we saw throughout the rest of the game, the offense wasn't necessarily holding their weight. And as much as Kyle Shanahan is an offensive genius, I think he's a great play caller. He seems to be comfortable enough, and I think this is in part because he has Jimmy Garoppolo as his quarterback. He seems comfortable enough having a 17-7 lead and being comfortable with his defense being the reason that they're able to hold on, rather than being able to close teams out by getting to 24 to 30 points and making it 30 to 10, 30 to 14 win.
Right, 24.
Right, 24, exactly. He seems a little bit more comfortable, especially in this game, as you had just pointed out, and I agree with you. We had the ball 3 times with inside the 50, their 50, and we still punted. That, to me, says he's protecting a lead rather than trying to win. Now, it comes down to him. It comes down to the players as well, too. And I'm not going to – I'd be lying if I said Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't given opportunities. He was able to throw the ball 30 times. He completed 16% of those throws. So he could have played better. And I've always said – there are plays throughout the course of every single game that sometimes you just need your quarterback to make a play. That doesn't mean it has to be in the fourth quarter. That doesn't mean it has to be in the last 2 minutes. Yeah. But there are plays in every single game that says, oh, I needed that play to hit to keep that drive alive. Then maybe we would have come away with 3 points.
Play, he could have been better.
Absolutely. And if you go back and watch film or you watch games again over time, you can say, oh, man, that play changed the course of a game. And all those plays, every play matters. And every play matters even more come playoff time. So Stafford wasn't perfect in that game. He had multiple opportunities, and he did turn over the ball multiple times. But where I have to give them credit was they decided to go out on their shield. They decided to go out with him throwing the ball 40-plus times. And they allowed their 2 receivers, OBJ and Cooper Kupp, to do their thing. So I have to give them credit. I wish we could have played better. I think the defense still did well, considering the yards that were given up. To hold a team to 20 points, I would have said the 49ers won. That didn't happen. I think it's fair to ask for my offense to score more than 20 or more points. You can absolutely ask that. So I got no problem. That we were able, gave up yards, but we were tough when we really needed it to be. When it comes to the offense, I think it's fair to ask for a little bit more. That didn't happen. And that's also why you would move off of Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's not going to come back this next year.
No. And if you look at with the Rams, right? The Rams realized, Jared Goff, you can win games with Jared Goff. Yeah, we will be fine in the playoffs. Maybe we can, sneak past the wild card round and, make it to the division round. But Jared Goff isn't going to take us over the top, right? So that's what they did. They said, Jared Goff isn't going to make this team a Super Bowl contending team. He's the reason why we're not a Super Bowl contending team. He's the reason why, so, and they went and they traded Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford. And Matthew Stafford has been really good in the playoffs so far. And Matthew Stafford, when they needed him to make plays, he did that, not just in the Niners game, but he also did that in the Tampa Bay game. So,
right.
I mean, Matthew Stafford and what he's done this season, he's obviously gotten his chance. But Sean McVay realized, we need a guy that can make this team into Super Bowl contending team. We need a quarterback that can take us over the top, and that's what they did. And they got Matthew Stafford, and he's been that and he's done that. So this season,
and that's a perfect example why professional sports is a business. Absolutely, the human element is there. You're going to, you have these guys in your locker room, Jimmy Garoppolo's, these guys for 5 years. You have a relationship with them. Shanahan, I'm sure, likes Jimmy Garoppolo as a person. But if you have the ability to go out and potentially get, whether it be in the draft by picking a Trey Lance, whether it be in free agency in trade like the Rams did to go get a Matthew Stafford, if you have the ability to go out and get a guy who's potentially a top 10 quarterback or borderline quarterback, a little bit, essentially what I'm saying is a little bit better than average, which I think Jimmy Garoppolo is average at best. If you have a chance to go get one of these elite or top 10 to 12 quarterbacks that can at certain times be the reason you win games, you do that. You go out and get those guys. So with that in mind, you can like Jimmy Garoppolo all you want. The goal still is to win a Super Bowl. If Trey Lance can be even just marginally better and be the shit that leads you to a Super Bowl, you would take that. You take that. That's the business of it. That's just the business of football, of professional sports.
Yep. Well, moving on to the next topic, I know we've been talking about this. A lot of people have been talking about this. But now I'm going to ask you the question. Where will the 49ers trade Jimmy Garoppolo?
Where will they trade him? I'll give you three teams, and maybe then after I talk about them, I'll give you one. But I'll tell you three that I think are legitimate contender. And it's not going to be anything. I'm not going to say anything earth shattering or anything like that. But the Washington Commanders, I think, are in prime position. The Pittsburgh Steelers, prime position, and then my dark horse is the Carolina Panthers. So I think those three each have potential openings. I think that Sam Darnold, and I'm a USC fan, by the way, Sam Darnold is not the quarterback that's going to lead you to a Super Bowl. Maybe if everything goes perfect, he can help lead you to the playoffs, but you need it to be, I think, almost perfect. Jimmy Garoppolo has shown the ability to be able to manage an offense well. He's not going to do anything crazy. So with that being said, go ahead.
The way I term Jimmy Garoppolo is in a good situation, Jimmy Garoppolo is serviceable. He could
absolutely.
He could win football games. Jimmy Garoppolo in a right situation, in a good situation, is a serviceable quarterback.
Right. I agree 100%. And with that, that's a perfect transition to what my next point was with the Steelers. They just need a serviceable quarterback. Mason Rudolph is not the answer, but I think that the way that locker room is built, the way the culture over there with the Steelers is set, culture-wise, he could fit into that locker room really, really well. They've got some solid, savvy vets in there. Now, I don't think their offensive line is perfect, but I think that I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. He knows how to coach the talent he has. I think he's such a great coach that he knows how to coach the best out of average players or even below average players. He gets the best out of what his roster is. 2 years ago, they went, I believe, 9-8 or 10-7, and they should have probably been a below 500 team. Yeah, and they still won.
When Mason Rudolph was their starting quarterback and Ben got hurt.
Yeah, and then Duck Hodges. They won games with Duck Hodges. Like, what are we talking about? These guys are below average quarterbacks.
I remember that year they were competing with the Bills. They were putting up a fight against the Bills, and the Bills were
right
that year. Yep.
Right. So if you're the Steelers, you're sitting there saying, okay, I like what we have in this defense. I know what I got from T.J. Watt. I believe our corners can continue to improve. Ahkello Witherspoon was solid for them. He wasn't great, but he was solid. I think on the back of that defense, you can sit there and say, if I can get average quarterback play, if I can get a guy that can potentially throw the ball a little bit further than what Ben Roethlisberger was doing this last year, and being able to execute the offense at a high level, then I think we can win some games. Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that can be part of the reason you win. They've got a Najee Harris over there. They've got a Deontay Johnson. I think James Washington might be a free agent, so I don't think he'll be back. But they got a Chase Claypool. They got
go
ahead.
The Steelers, you don't even need a James Washington, right? It's nice to have a James Washington, but when you have Juju, you have Chase Claypool.
Well, Juju's gone. Juju's a free agent now. So if he comes back.
Signs, right?
But I'm with you. They have the weapons for sure. That absolutely, I'm absolutely with you. They even got two. They got what's his face, the tight end from Penn State, Pat Freiermuth. I like him a lot too. So they've got weapons there. If they can get average quarterback play, absolutely they can at minimum be in the playoffs again. 100%, no question. So for me, it's those two teams and the Panthers. Now, I say the Panthers because they seem to be aggressive enough. They were aggressive enough this year to go out and get a Sam Darnold. They also were aggressive enough to go sign Stephon Gilmore during the season, Hassan Reddick, and a couple others as well too. So I think that defense is really, really close. I think if you can keep Christian McCaffrey healthy, those offensive weapons are really good too. I 100% believe that. So, and I think DJ Moore is an underrated receiver. I think he's really good too. So if they can get it, I think DJ Moore actually would do really well with Garoppolo, just because I think that he can do well underneath. He can do well on slants. I think DJ Moore's a really good all around receiver. But for someone like Jimmy Garoppolo, he would be able to be better in short to intermediate routes too, because Jimmy Garoppolo is not the quarterback to really push the ball down the field consistently. Yeah. So those three teams are the ones I would look at. I say those three teams as well too, because it gets into a bidding war, right? If these three teams are the ones that are there and they don't want to be left at the altar and they're not sold on these quarterbacks coming out of the draft, whether it be Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, those are the three top, and it's considered a weaker class. If you're not interested in those guys, then you have to sit there and say, well, what are our chances of getting Aaron Rodgers if he leaves, right? What are our chances of us getting Russell Wilson if he leaves? I actually don't think Russell Wilson will leave. So at that point, it turns into, okay, these guys, especially if it gets later into the offseason, and let's say Aaron Rodgers goes to the Broncos. Because I think if he leaves, I actually think he will leave the Packers. I think I can see the Broncos as a destination. I think the Panthers are a sleeper too, but I don't think he'll go there. So let's say he does, and let's say Russ doesn't leave. At that point in time, will Jameis Winston be off the board? He's a free agent. Maybe he goes back to Tampa, because I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo goes to Tampa. I don't see that.
Bruce, with the weapons,
he would never do that. He would never do that.
Bruce Arians wouldn't want Jimmy Garoppolo, but at the same time, like, with the weapons that Tampa has, like, how you can, like, you expect Jimmy Garoppolo to get the ball to Mike Evans downfield, Chris Godwin,
right?
Like, no, that would
exactly
be a perfect match whatsoever.
So that's not happening. So I say those three teams, and then I'll say this last part here too. Let's say the Niners trade him to the Washington Commanders. You could potentially get a third-round pick in this year's draft and a player. I'd look at their third-round pick, and I'd look at Kendall Fuller. I think Kendall Fuller is a really good corner. He's a guy you can bring in that can be potentially how he plays. He could potentially be CB1. He could potentially be CB2. I think he's better than Ambry Thomas. So I think right now you would have potentially three starting level, based off what we've seen from Ambry Thomas, who I think has been really good. We'd have three starting caliber cornerbacks. And with Ambry Thomas, it's been like 7 games. So he's going to continue to improve. You could potentially roll out Emmanuel Mosley, Kendall Fuller, possibly Diamo Lenore, depending on what you do in the slot, or Ambry Thomas, depending on what you want to do, or you go get somebody in the draft, or we'll see what they do in free agency. But for me, based off what I've seen from the 49ers, they don't seem to build, they don't seem to value the cornerback position in free agency. So what I mean by that is they haven't shown the ability that they're willing to go get a top tier J.C. Jackson, which I would love. I'm a big J.C. Jackson fan. Bay Area baller, that's my guy. I like that guy. He's cool. So they haven't shown that they want to go get a J.C. Jackson. So that doesn't mean that that can't change. It just says they haven't always spent top tier money. They like to build from the inside out. They'll pay a Trent Williams who's on the offensive line. They're going to pay a Nick Bosa. You have to pay that guy. So they want to build from the inside out. Yeah, Kim, I'm with you. They either tag him, and they probably do tag him, and then work out a long-term deal. That's what I think is going to happen.
They probably will bring him
back. I think they will.
There's the player that you probably on any football team, you want J.C. Jackson on your football, right? So I think they will bring him back, right? Either if they we've seen teams in the past, like just even last year, like you saw Washington, they franchise tagged Brandon Scherf last year. Mm-hmm. And right now he's a free agent, so will they give him an extension? I think they probably will, right? But we've seen teams franchise tag players, and then next year they work out a contract.
And that's exactly what I think they'll do. And that's the thing. There's certain players I think are worth that. Not every player. Sometimes players get tagged multiple times. Kirk Cousins got tagged 3 times. I think it was 3 full times, and it goes up each year. Well, in my opinion, J.C. Jackson's a top 3 cornerback in this whole league. People like to talk about Trayvon Diggs. Yeah, heck yeah. People like to talk about Trayvon Diggs. And while he had a solid year, and it's no fluke that you get 11 interceptions, like he's not locked down. Why are we not talking about J.C. Jackson the same way? He had 8 interceptions this year. That was second in the league. Oh, by the way, this dude leads the league since 2018 in interceptions with 25. He was undrafted. So why do we not talk about J.C. Jackson the way that we talk about Trayvon Diggs? Well, a lot of people would say, oh, well, the market, he's over there in Dallas, America's team, and, the Patriots, they're quiet. They just do things the professional way. Totally agree with that. But I would not put Trayvon Diggs on the same level as a J.C. Jackson. So I say that just to say, as much as he has the ball skills, he also limits receivers he's great in coverage as well too, whether it be man, whether it be zone. That's a guy, if the Patriots don't tag him and he hits free agency, guess what? He's still going to get a bag. He's still probably going to be the top paid corner in the league, at worst, second behind Jalen Ramsey when it's all said and done. Are the Niners going to do that? I have no reason to believe that they will. I'd like it. I would have no issue if they did, but I have no reason to believe that they will. So I'll say this. That's why I mentioned the Kendall Fuller, and that's why I like that trade. But it's also, and I put this out on a tweet last night, and I mentioned guys like Mike Hughes, guys like Desmond King. Okay, he was tagged twice. Gotcha. He got paid a crazy amount of money. But I mentioned guys like Desmond King. I mentioned guys like Mike Hughes because those seem like signings that the 49ers would do. Those are guys that provide you versatility with playing outside. They also can play in the slot. Oh, and by the way, both guys have return ability. They can return kicks or punts. In a pinch, we know it's a long season, 17-game season. The 49ers have shown, guys get hurt. So what happens when, let's say, crossing my fingers that this doesn't happen, it's Emmanuel Mosley and Ambry Thomas. Well, what happens if Ambry Thomas or Emmanuel Mosley goes out? You're putting Ambry Thomas at CB1. Well, maybe you wanted to have Kendall Fuller, or maybe you wanted to get one of these two guys who have the positional versatility to play in the slot and or outside. Because if you get a Mike Hughes or you're getting a Desmond King, you could potentially slide them outside, then have Lenore come in as potentially CB4 to play slot, which is what they wanted to do with him in the first place. So long story short, I know I've been going on a rant here a little bit. Those seem more in line with the kinds of cornerback moves the Niners would make based off of what I've seen. Now, maybe they haven't signed to J.C. Jackson because J.C. Jackson hasn't been a free agent. So we'll see going forward. But based off what I've seen from this organization, and you said it as well too, they build from the inside out.
They don't, like we've seen in the past, right? The Niners don't like to get those big names. They don't make a lot of big splashy moves. They don't bring in, your typical like superstars. The last guy that I remember the Niners had interest in was OBJ, and when he was in New York. All right, they want OBJ. Can we actually pull this off, right? But that was the last guy that was actually like, the Niners were interested in this big name. Otherwise, the Niners really don't like, they really don't go after your J.C. Jacksons or your Antonio Brown when he was on the market. Like, they don't go after those type of guys, the big name.
And they weren't going to get OBJ on that contract. Nobody was, and that's why he cleared waivers.
Yeah. So when I look at where will Jimmy Garoppolo end up, like obviously Pittsburgh is a place that I could see him end up, but I honestly think Pittsburgh might go the route of trying to get a Malik Willis if he falls, or try to get one of those guys. But I'm not gonna throw that. I definitely think if they can't land the quarterback in the draft and they don't like anybody and they're getting desperate, I could definitely see them trying to get Jimmy Garoppolo and trying to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. And obviously the Commanders, right? The Commanders, the only reason I'm a little bit iffy with the Commanders and a little bit 50-50 with the Commanders is because they have Taylor Heineke already. And Taylor Heineke isn't great, right? He's not bad. But I remember watching one Monday Night Football game, and I'm like, Taylor Heineke is basically kind of like a younger Jimmy Garoppolo. Check down. Like Antonio Gibson.
Jimmy Garoppolo with athleticism. More athleticism.
More athletic. He's more athletic, and he's younger and he's less injury prone, right? And I'm like, it's basically what Jimmy Garoppolo did in San Francisco, where it's just like hitting the check down. Like I remember watching that Monday night game where they were playing Seattle, and like I think Antonio Gibson had like 80 receiving yards, and he was the leading receiver for them.
Right.
He was just hitting the check downs, and he's just kind of like what Jimmy Garoppolo does on the Niners, right? So I'm like, all right, like the Commanders is obviously a destination, right? If they feel like Jimmy Garoppolo is worth it, and they can win with Jimmy Garoppolo. At the same time, basically the same things that Jimmy Garoppolo does and the same thing that Jimmy Garoppolo does is the same thing that Taylor Heineke does, and both of them do it well, which is hitting the check down, and that's what Taylor Heineke also does, but he's just a younger, more athletic version of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right.
So, I mean, I watched the Commanders 50-50. I think they could do it, but at the same time, I don't know if they will. I think they'll keep Heineke this year, and then the Panthers.
So you're essentially saying that move for to the Commanders would be a lateral move. It wouldn't be better. It wouldn't be worse. So why give up draft capital for a guy that's potentially younger with higher upside?
Yeah. Why give up draft capital, number one? And number two, if you look at the contract, right? Like, if you look at his contract next year, unless you can even, lessen his contract, reduce that contract, or,
I don't think the Niners want to take any salary. We're already going to be up against the cap a little bit.
And then on top of that, it's like, you could give up on whatever third round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, and then he could get hurt for you in your second game, and in your whole season, it's like, all right, like I traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, and now he's hurt.
Right. Well, that's why I say a good framework is the Carson Wentz trade. You can make it be a conditional, potentially not in this draft, maybe for next year. Let's say it's 2/3. It's a third this year and a conditional third next year based off of if Jimmy Garoppolo plays 75% of the snaps, then it turns into a second. Like you could potentially do something like that. Otherwise, and I think that's actually probably a decent framework for it. I think it's either going to be that or a third and 2 players. I could see that. That's kind of what I look back and say, you know what, this is a decent framework. I'm with Pinor on that too, by the way. I wouldn't be shocked if they roll it back with the same corners. I actually said in my post, I wouldn't be shocked if they go back and they do sign Jason Verrett to a cheap 1-year contract. He's not going to get a big contract on the market, and he's shown the ability. He's shown the ability when he's healthy. He is a top tier type corner. If he wants to continue playing, it's gonna, he's gonna have to rehab his image somewhere. The 49ers have been there for him a couple times now. I would not be shocked to see that.
Yep. Kenny Pickett's also a guy that plays for the University of Pittsburgh, so he could also go to, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is definitely a place I could possibly see him ending up. And I know people have been throwing around the Broncos. No, the Broncos, like, number one.
Who, for Jimmy?
Huh?
For Jimmy?
Yeah. I've
seen no.
Broncos. Like, the only reason I'm saying no for the Broncos is, like, you have Teddy Bridgewater, who's a free agent, but how much of an improvement is Jimmy Garoppolo over Teddy Bridgewater, right?
No.
I would say they're probably the same tier, but Jimmy Garoppolo's better. But how
much
of an improvement is Jimmy Garoppolo for you to say, okay, we'll trade picks and assets to get Jimmy Garoppolo with that contract, with his injury history? How much better is he than Teddy Bridgewater, right? So
I agree.
So I just don't think the Broncos are going to trade for Jimmy G because it's like Teddy Bridgewater, like I said, I think they're in the same tier. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo's better, but
it's not adding much to you. There's not much value being added. If they're going to make a move, it's going to be for one of the top tier guys like Aaron Rodgers.
Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, and Matt Corral, right? But at the same time, like I said, like, how much of an improvement is Jimmy Garoppolo over Teddy Bridgewater where you're willing to give up assets for Jimmy Garoppolo? At his contract, at what he's supposed to get paid, how much of an improvement is he? So I really don't think the Broncos are out. So, like, the only two teams that I would necessarily think is either the Steelers if they get desperate and they can't land one of those quarterbacks, or, the Panthers. Like you said, the Panthers are definitely a team that I think could trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Matt Rule, if he becomes desperate, because, like, Matt Rule, he's already had
on thin ice.
3 years in Carolina. He couldn't do nothing. And this year they started off 3-0. What was the record at the end of the year? Like 5-12.
Was it that bad? I don't even remember, but I know it didn't end up well. Yeah.
They were 3-0, and then they only won 2 more games for the rest of the season. So right. So Matt Rule's on thin ice, and if he doesn't have faith in Sam Darnold, and he wants to, go get a Jimmy Garoppolo and say, hey, maybe we can win with Jimmy Garoppolo this year, and maybe he can take us, at least get us into the playoffs. I think Carolina is definitely a destination where he could possibly end up.
I agree. And just the last point right here, E. Kim says, Denver wants another John Elway, a big arm QB that can throw down the field. I agree with that, but here's why. The elements, when it's wintertime and you have to throw the ball down the field, or make a play, extend a play with your legs a little bit. Yeah, absolutely you want that kind of guy. That's why you make it work with the Brock Osweiler. They made that trade. That's why you try and get potentially Aaron Rodgers, who's played in Green Bay all these years. He's still got a top level arm talent as well too. It's hard to have a good or decent offense if you have a limited thrower already in natural weather. So what about those guys when the elements come into play? That's actually why when you go to like the combine or you go to people talk about, I need this 6'5" type quarterback who maybe 240, huge hands. How does he grip the ball? He's got small hands. That's why people talk about those things. When the elements come to play, can you hold on to the ball?
Yeah, and Baller makes a great point about the corners. Like, the Niners, they build in the trenches. They believe in the trenches. They believe that we win football games in the trenches, right? Like, and that's the thing. Like, the Niners had so much expectations for that offensive line this year, and it wasn't that great in the beginning of the season, but they definitely picked it up towards the end of the season. They definitely showed up in the playoffs, and they definitely improved as the season went on. But the Niners, like, they believe in, building in the trenches. They believe we win football games in the trenches. So they don't invest in the correct position as much as other teams are, like, the Browns or, the Packers, who'd be like, okay, we'll draft Jair Alexander in the first round. We'll get Greedy Williams. We'll get, like, teams like the Browns and like the Packers.
Marshawn Lattimore's, Denzel Ward's.
Yeah, teams like the Browns and the Packers are the two teams that come to my mind that care about the correct position. On top of, obviously having a Myles Garrett and, County, and obviously the Packers have Rashawn Gary and Zadarius Smith and things like that, but they also believe that cornerback is an important position in the NFL, and they definitely invest in that position also.
Absolutely. If I were to say what I think will happen, I think they sign possibly. I think they're going to sign one corner in free agency, maybe two, and then they're going to get somebody in the draft as well too. And I don't think it'll necessarily be early. There's a couple guys in the draft I'm interested in, but I think we have a couple other pressing needs, like Baller was saying there, edge, offensive line. I think they'll get somebody in the draft as well too.
Yep. I would love to see them get, a J.C. Jackson or Stephon Gilmore possibly, but I just don't see it happening.
Would love it. It'd be exciting if it happened.
Yeah, I would be super excited. And Ekim says DJ Reed back to the 49ers. I mean, I was still upset we let DJ Reed go, right? Because when you see a player that you let go and then he comes out and he becomes a star on another team and he plays well, I'm like, all right, like, where was that here? Why couldn't we unlock that potential? Like, why couldn't we unlock that skill set? So with DJ Jones, DJ Reed is a little bit tough because I wish he was on our team and especially when Brett went down. If he was our, our starting quarterback, or he was, playing every Sunday, I would definitely feel more confident in our cornerback group. Especially when Brett went down, I would have been definitely like, all right, like Brett went down, but we still got DJ Reed and some other guys, so it's not, concerning.
As the team stands right now, we could use DJ Reed in the slot. I would like that. Right now, I like him in the slot better than I do Deommodore Lenoir. And maybe that's just because I haven't seen a whole lot from Lenoir because he hasn't played a whole lot. That doesn't mean he can't be good. But even if he is good, we still need depth. I think we only have, 3 corners signed? So I think DJ Reed's actually one of the better slot corners in the league. I'm not saying it's the best, but he's definitely more than serviceable. Yeah. Credit to him up there in Seattle. I hate that he's there and it's worked out, but I'm happy for him. He's a solid player.
And with the Niners, like, obviously every team needs depth, but with the Niners, it's almost like we need extra depth because like the Niners players are so injury prone. Guys get hurt left and right, and you never know with the Niners players, right? Like one second, Nick Bosa's making a play, and then the next play he's on the floor grabbing his knee. Jason Brett getting an interception, and then the next play, he's
all in week 1.
Yeah, right. So it's like you never know with the Niners and their players because one second they could be making a play, and the other second, they could be grabbing their ankle or their knee, or they could be hurt. So you never know with Niners players. But the Niners definitely, the more depth the Niners have, the better at any position. It's just
absolutely. Better. Let me ask you this one question. This is a rule of thumb for me that I use. How many teams have more than 2 starting caliber cornerbacks? Like that you would put them in. Like I can say right now, the Broncos this year, what we saw this year, they had a group of DBs back there that were nice. I thought that teams would try to trade for some of those guys, to be honest.
One team that's underrated with DBs. One team that has great DBs if they can unlock their potential. Carolina.
Oh yeah, C.J. Henderson, all these guys now. Stephon.
C.J. Henderson.
Oh yeah.
They drafted this year from South Carolina. I'm forgetting his name.
Oh yes, J.C. Horn, love him.
Yes, they have guys. Like, if they can unlock those guys' potential, especially they bring back Gilmore. Right?
Absolutely.
They have, if not 2, 3 starting caliber cornerback ones on their team. So they have guys.
Exactly, and that's my question there. It's maybe 2 teams, no more than 5, and 5's honestly pushing it, to be honest. And I say that just to say, yes, it's hard to find top tier. Like, I'd say right now, there's no lockdown corner in the league. There's really good corners, but like a guy that you're going to say, hey, take him out of the game on a week in, week out basis. I put Jalen Ramsey in that position. I put J.C. Jackson. Those are guys that get put in that position to do that. And I think that they do a really good job, but there's no Deion Sanders. And I say that lightly, but that's not light. It's Deion Sanders, right? So I think there's no Revis in the league right now. I think J.C. Jackson is probably the closest to that.
Yeah, what years was like Revis was like what 2010, 2011. He was like holding guys like Ocho Cinco, Andre.
Yes.
Guys like Calvin Johnson under 35.
Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, and he was getting the picks, right? Like we see Trevon Diggs getting those interceptions, but he's allowing
he gets torched
yards, right? Like a lot of yards, right? And
he had like 950 yards given up this year. Yeah, J.C. Jackson gave up like 650. He gave up like almost 300 yards less. But I get really agitated with that. We talk about this dude because he got 11 picks, which is not easy. But we also, let's be real, you're getting targeted a little bit less. You're getting targeted more, so you're going to have more opportunities.
Exactly, right? Like when you base a corner just based solely off how much interceptions they have, you're basically, okay, they're just how much they get targeted, right? And it's like with Trevon Diggs would be a liability on the field if he didn't get those 11 minutes. He would be a liability.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Even if he was on the Niners, right? Like, and some people say, oh, that's Cowboys hate. No, that's not Cowboys hate. Like, if Trevon Diggs was on the Niners and he wasn't getting 11 interceptions, he wasn't getting interceptions, and he was getting constantly beat, he would be a liability. Like, what would make him different from Josh Norman or Trevon Diggs if he wasn't getting those interceptions? Now, obviously, I would say Trevon Diggs is better, but at the same time, what would be the difference if he didn't get those interceptions? He would just get beat over and over again. So
right. And I'll close out my argument right there because I see people are commenting about it, and you have this one pulled up. E. Kim says Stokes and Alexander, and that's my point. My point is that's two, right? How many teams have? My question was how many teams have more than two, like starting caliber? Like you want those guys on the field? I need to find a way to get them on the field. So, and my point in saying that is you build through the draft as well too, like. I think, and I value cornerback as a premium position. I do think you should use high level. I do think you should use high level picks on a cornerback. That doesn't mean you hit every time, but guess what? You need to have solid depth behind you because not everybody can be a top 15 corner. Like we don't have that. Jason Verrett when he's been healthy, he's been really good. If you can have him and Emmanuel Mosley, and then if you pair those two, like if they didn't get injured, Emmanuel Mosley and Jason Verrett would be great right now. That'd be insane. But it's also because it's a long season, it's a 17-game season plus playoffs. If you make it, you got to have depth. And the depth behind there, that's why I talk about these guys like Mike Hughes, Desmond King, Desmond King is arguably a top 5 slot corner. So I talk about him. I'd love it to stay quiet, but he's also not getting paid. He's good.
Yeah, one guy that I wouldn't mind the Niners getting, and one guy that I actually felt played pretty well this season is Casey Hayward for the Raiders, right?
He's still good. Yeah.
Was pretty good this year. Like I watched him play I've watched Raiders games this season, like Monday night against the Ravens. I've watched games Casey Hayward played, and Casey Hayward was pretty solid, right? And we know the Niners, the odds of the Niners getting a J.C. Jackson or Stephon Gilmore, even like if you look at the safety position, like a Tyrann Mathieu,
right?
Like that, the odds of that are pretty much like really low.
Right.
Like,
you got to look at that secondary tier.
Yeah.
Right? I'm with you.
Look at the secondary tier, guys that are good.
Terrell Edmonds, Justin Reed. Those are two guys in my head that I'm thinking about.
Guys that are good players, but aren't the big names like your Devontae Adams or your Honey Badgers or your J.C. Jackson. So I wouldn't mind the Niners bringing in Casey Hayward to add depth. On the team. So I would definitely.
I agree.
One guy that I would definitely wouldn't mind having on the team is Casey Hayward.
Casey Hayward and Chris Harris as well too. Now he's older. Chris Harris is getting older, and I don't want to use him on the outside. I want him only in the slot. And I mentioned his name because as a nickel corner, you got to be able to tackle. How are you in run coverage? And that's what K'Wan Williams is so great at. He's not the greatest in coverage. He's not bad. Yes, he got torched a couple times, but every corner does. So he's not bad. He's about average in coverage. But what stands apart is he's really good as a run fitter. So I'd love to see him come in. That's why I'm still interested in Chris Harris. Yes, he's a bit older. I think he's closing in on 35. He's getting up there. But he can still play nicker at a solid pace.
32.
Okay, it's 32. I still think he's solid. I'm not saying he'd be my first choice, but I would not be mad to have a guy like him come in. Yeah. I don't need you to be all world. I need you to make the smart hitting play.
Yeah, and you like bringing guys like Casey Hayward and even like you mentioned Chris Harris Jr. You don't need those guys to necessarily start from day one or be your season because you have guys like Mosley. You have guys.
Right.
Who knows if Ambry Thomas will be next year? Who knows if Ambry Thomas comes out and he's way better.
Right. I just need guys that are going to come in and push Ambry. Yeah. You don't necessarily have to beat him out, but you need to push him. He needs to feel the heat. Your job's never safe. No position. I need guys that can come in that can be right there with him, and in a pinch, if he goes down or if they just beat him out, they start, and it lights a fire up his butt to keep working.
Yep. Well, final topic of the day: the Super Bowl is this weekend. I wish I could say the Niners are in it, but it's not. And we lost to the Rams, but I mean, obviously, I want to watch the Super Bowl because it's the Super Bowl. I mean,
right?
Like I said this pre-show, and I don't know if people agree with me here. But I'd rather have the Niners lose in the NFC Championship game than lose in the Super Bowl. Because if they lost in the Super Bowl again, especially
Crushing.
against the Bengals. Like, I mean, the Bengals are good. Don't get me wrong, but losing to the Bengals in the Super Bowl, like if it was Kansas City, losing would be tough. But like, okay, it's Kansas City's Patrick Mahomes. Like we get it, right? But
Right.
losing to the Bengals when we beat them in the regular season, and I mean, yes, they had some special teams miscues, but the Bengals are a beatable football team. We could beat that team.
Right.
And if we lost to the Bengals in the Super Bowl, it would have been tough. It would have been way worse, in my opinion, than losing in the NFC Championship game. Even though the NFC Championship game hurt really, really bad.
Right.
I would rather have us lose in the NFC Championship game than in the Super Bowl again, because it would have been tough. But
Right.
I want to get your Super Bowl predictions. Who do you have winning? Are you leaning? I mean, I want the Bengals to win. I don't want the Rams to win, but who do you think will win?
So I'm right there with you. I would love to see the Bengals win. That's who I'm rooting for. And I'll be honest, it's probably because the Rams are an NFC West rival. I don't hate the Rams, but I just don't care about them.
Yeah.
It's just kind of whatever. I know a lot of people will say, oh, LA teams, they like to build. And I'm a Dodgers fan. I'm a USC fan, but I was born in Southern California, but I grew up a 49ers fan.
Did you
I did. I said I was a Dodgers fan. Yes. Yeah. So I totally understand the sentiment of, man, these LA teams, all they do is build, but I don't necessarily care. And I think that if we're going to be totally honest, the Rams are not going to care too if they win a Super Bowl this year and then they don't win another one for the next 10 years,
I mean,
and they're in cap hell, they're in, not able to make trades. Like, they're not going to care about that. The goal is to win a Super Bowl. So
exactly. And this year the Rams went all in.
Right.
Like, yeah. Like, if they lost the NFC Championship game, it would have been tough, right? Because this was the year that the Rams put it all, brought in all the guys, Miller, OBJ. This was their year to win the Super Bowl. This was kind of like what they were saying. Hey, this is our year.
Right.
Yeah, screw next year. Screw the future. Obviously, we care, but right now we're focused on this year and winning the Super Bowl now. We're in win now, this year mode.
Absolutely. And you know what? To be honest, I mean, it's paid off for them. They're in the Super Bowl now. We'll see what happened. Said Joe Burrow has the same amount of talent as Josh Allen. I mean, what does she mean by talent? Because if we're talking about physical talent, that's not even the question. They're not in the same tier. The dude knows how to win games. I think that's just not true. It's just, Joy's my girl. I like her, but nah. If we're talking about physical talent, it's not the same. If you're talking about winning games at the quarterback position, I mean, there's more ways than one to win. And let's be real. Yeah, just because he lost to Patrick Mahomes and then the next week Joe Burrow wins, that's the difference? No, not necessarily. Joy knows better than that. She's smart.
Yeah, wins. Wins aren't a QB stat. The reason wins aren't a QB stat, like people brought up in this year when Jimmy Garoppolo was 2-0 in the playoffs and Josh Allen's 3-3. And just look at the stats.
Look at the stats.
7-1.
Josh Allen was a superhero and they lost.
Right? Exactly, right? Like, so you can't blame Josh Allen for throwing 7 touchdowns and only have 1 interception. He was playing well himself, right? But would you say just because Jimmy Garoppolo was 2-0 this year in the playoffs and Josh Allen was 1-1 in the playoffs, would you say, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo's better than Josh Allen? No, you wouldn't say that, right? That's stupid.
He says here in the comments, she didn't say success or same tier. She specifically said talent, and I left the space. So when I hear the word talent, I have to think that she's talking about physical ability and quarterback play in general on the field. I still have Josh Allen. I really do. And I think, I'll be honest, I said this before the playoff. I said this months ago. I'll be honest. I said, I like the Bills. I like Josh Allen. He's a high-level talent. I won't consider them a true playoff team until they get a balanced running attack. Dayball hasn't shown the ability to do that. And I don't want to get too far off because we're talking about these two guys. But if you're going to tell me if the Bills had a legitimate running attack with a coach that really runs the ball with their running back rather than having your quarterback be your leading rusher, we'd probably be talking about a different story right now. It would probably be the Bills in the Super Bowl right now because the Bills probably would have beat the Chiefs because they had the ability to have ball control offense and the ability to still put up points quickly. So that's a totally different story. When I hear talent, that's what I hear, and I don't agree with her on that one. I can't.
Talent-wise, no. Josh Allen isn't. Joe Burrow's not even relatively close to being same talent level or even being more talented than Josh Allen. It's like Joe Burrow, obviously, he's winning football games. He's had an impressive season. Nobody expected the Bengals to even win their division, rather less than make it to the Super Bowl.
Right.
People have them winning 5 games this year, right? So what Joe Burrow has done this season is incredible.
It's incredible. It's insane.
Yeah,
Good for
right.
him.
If you're just looking at it from a talent perspective, like, no, it's not even close. Like, you wouldn't
No,
say Joe Burrow is the same talent level as Patrick Mahomes. Like, no, that just doesn't make sense. We
no.
wouldn't say that with Josh Allen either, right?
I'll
So,
say it like this: Joe Burrow has a good arm. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes have elite great arms.
elite great arms.
They just
Exactly.
do. And they're getting better. They're getting smarter. I mean, that's what I'm saying. If you're talking about elite quarterback level play, you can define that many ways. And Joe Burrow knows how to win games, no question. And I think he's had the greatest college football season of all time. I'll argue that one. I love that stuff. But if we're just talking about talent and the ability to raise your level of play to a certain level, I'm sorry. I've seen Patrick Mahomes, I've seen Josh Allen do some things that Joe Burrow could never do. So if that's the question, if she's saying just pure stepping on the field, this dude has the talent, like this dude's the guy. Nah, I'm sorry.
Joe Burrow,
We can't sit here and act like Jamar Chase didn't come in and also play a huge role this year too. Like Jamar Chase is that guy. If we're talking about talent, Jamar Chase is the dude that has, okay, he came into the league year one and he's already arguably one of the best receivers that franchise has ever had. And I'm not trying to disrespect Ocho Cinco. I'm not trying to disrespect Collinsworth or AJ Green, but he's up there in that conversation talent-wise. Joe Burrow's good. He's really solid. He's really good, and he knows how to win games. But if we're talking about stepping on the field, talent just dripping off of you, that's Josh Allen.
Yeah,
it just is.
Yeah, you can't argue that. You just can't. It just doesn't make sense to argue that. Joe Burrow's had an amazing season. I can't take anything away from that because Joe Burrow, in my opinion, is a top 6 quarterback in the NFL. That just
he's nice. Yeah,
because what he's done this year with that offensive line is ridiculous. And like I get it, they have Jamar Chase, but we've seen, like I said, we've seen Patrick Mahomes have Kelsey, Tyreek, Sammy Watkins, and with a bad offensive line,
right?
You couldn't do nothing, right?
It couldn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, what Joe Burrow has done this season, what he's been able to overcome with coming off a torn ACL, coming back, and he's had amazing weapons, but with not having the greatest offensive line, having a mediocre offensive line,
right?
Still your team to the Super Bowl, like Joe Burrow, in my opinion, is a top 6 quarterback, and it's not even a debate. Now, I wouldn't put him, over, maybe your Josh Allen's or your Patrick. I wouldn't put him over Josh Allen or Mahomes or Rodgers or Brady this year. But Joe Burrow, in my opinion, is a top 6 quarterback. Just what he's done this year with that offensive line, I think he's a top 6 quarterback. But
yeah.
Without further ado, just your Super Bowl picks. What's your score?
Yeah. So I'm with you. I think that I want the Bengals to win, and I'm not going to put it past them to be able to win this game. I wouldn't put it past them, but I do think that this game comes down to the trenches, and I think that Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, Ashawn Robinson, even. Who's the other guy that I mean? Oh, and Aaron Donald. How did I not say his name? Like, they have the ability to wreck this game. And if that happens, the Bengals have no chance. If that happens, it's not going to even be close. And I hate to say that because, well, they're in the Super Bowl and they just played the Chiefs and they played them well. And Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, they rushed the quarterback well. They had Mahomes scrambling around, and they honestly had really good coverage on the back end as well, too, in that second half. But I think games can get won and lost and really messed up inside the trenches. It was only, three weeks ago that the Bengals gave up 9 sacks to the Titans. Like 9. They shouldn't have won the game. They shouldn't have won the game. No, I agree.
Take out Ryan Tannehill and put any other quarterback in the playoffs, right? Not including Jimmy Garoppolo. Put in Carr, put in Stafford, put in Mahomes, put in Allen, put in anybody.
Yeah. Right.
But outside Tannehill that game and then Jimmy Garoppolo, I would say the Titans were probably moving on to the AFC Championship game. The Bengals probably been eliminated if it wasn't for Tannehill's 3 interceptions. Because if your defense got 9 sacks, you probably won that.
That's a guy that he's better than. He's better than Tannehill. The better quarterback wins. The better quarterback won that game. Guess what? The same thing happened when the chips were on the table, NFC Championship game. The better quarterback won. Like, that's I'm gonna be real. Like, that's what happens come playoff time. If teams can get you if teams can find your weak link and make that person beat you, 9 times out of 10, the better quarterback will win that game. That's just my personal opinion. Von Miller, 2016 vibes in this one for me. I say he has the best day out of the defensive players. That absolutely could happen. He's been a menace since the playoffs started. He's getting comfortable in that offense. He looks healthy.
Like, I could see the same thing happen. Joe Burrow strip sack,
Oh, yeah.
Von Miller, when you already have Von Miller who could take over a football game single-handedly defensively on that defensive line, can force pressure, and you
And
put
you
in
haven't even
Aaron
mentioned
Donald,
Aaron Donald, who's
and you put
arguably the
Aaron
great.
Donald, and you put him into the equation, like
And Leonard
Joe
Floyd is no
Burrow.
slouch.
Yeah,
Leonard Floyd's good.
yeah, and if that defensive line can get after Joe Burrow, you could pretty much say the Bengals lost the Super Bowl.
Right.
And
And
that
that's why I feel bad saying it'll be a blowout. I'm not going to say it's going to be a blowout because I respect them. But I'll say this. I would not be shocked if there is a blowout in this game. Like, the Rams are going to come to play. The Rams understand and know the moment. What we saw in the NFC Championship game, they wanted that win. They wanted to be in this moment. Now they're here.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I think Aaron Donald's going to go crazy. He's not lining, he's going to go crazy. I think Von Miller's going to have a good game. Honestly, I think OBJ is going to have a good game as well too. Now, so I'll give you my score prediction. I'll say Rams 31. Yes, Jesse Bates is a really good safety. I agree. Rams 31. Bengals 20. But I think Jamar Chase will have his moments. I think he'll have a couple, but I think this is going to be a game where I think T. Higgins is going to have the biggest receiving game for any of the Bengals receivers.
Jesse Bates coming from. I hope so. Like, I would love.
I wouldn't mind it. I think he's going to get a decent amount of money too, though.
I don't think it's gonna happen. Honestly, the Niners aren't. I don't think they're gonna be willing to pay Jesse Bates big bucks.
That's gonna be a bidding war for that guy. I got my eye on Justin Reed, Terrell Edmonds. They're in a similar vein as Jesse Bates, in my honest opinion. Jesse Bates probably has the bigger name, and so he may command. Well, not just because it's bigger name. I think Jesse Bates is a good safety, but I think those other two guys are too. They're both 25. So if it's a bidding war for Jesse Bates, maybe there's a decent offer we could provide for a Terrell Edmonds and a Justin Reed. Also, Justin Reed's brother, we all know who it was, Eric Reed. I wonder if he'd be interested. He might have some interest. He just played us a few weeks back. He might have some interest in coming to the Niners and saying, man, I have a legitimate shot at possibly going to a Super Bowl. Like, we're going to be a free agent destiny. So those are the two I'm really interested in.
Those are the 205 said T. Higgins might be that shot. He honestly could. Honestly,
agreed.
Right? Like, that's the thing with the Bengals.
He's underrated. He's a really good receiver. I like him a lot.
Tyler Boyd, I said, was underrated, and he was one of my most underrated receivers a couple of years ago. But even T. Higgins, he's also super underrated because people look at Jamar Chase and like, oh, Jamar Chase.
They're a legitimate three-headed monster, for real.
And then like the thing is, like, there's been games like Jamar Chase popped off and had 200-yard games. There's also games that T. Higgins had, 100 receiving yard games and having big receiving days.
Right.
And then nobody looks at T. Higgins like, oh, this guy's really good. This guy's elite. No, because, he gets overlooked by Jamar Chase. But
right.
Higgins could be an X factor in this game. But the Super Bowl prediction, I think it's going to be a slow start for the offense, a slow start on the offensive side for the Bengals. We've seen that pretty much the whole playoffs. It's going to be a slow start, but I think they're going to pick it up. I still think the Rams are going to win this one, sadly. It's going to be tough seeing them hold the Lombardi trophy when I wish, Jimmy Garoppolo and Debo would be doing that and Kyle Shanahan was there, but
yeah,
obviously that's not the case. But I think the Rams are going to win it, even though I want the Bengals to win. I'm rooting for Joe Burrow. I want the Bengals to win, Who they going to beat them Bengals? Nobody.
Nobody.
I think that's going to end this Sunday, and I think, Joe Burrow sadly isn't going to bring, the city of Cincinnati a Super Bowl, but I think the Rams get this one done. 31. I want to say 31. I'm debating either 27 or 24, but I'm going to say 31, 27. Bengals lose. I think Von Miller and Aaron Donald expect them to get after Joe Burrow, and I think, and I don't the thing is, with that divisional round, obviously Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times, but I don't expect Matthew Stafford in the Super Bowl to throw 3 interceptions and cost him the game.
Yeah, I don't either.
That's not happening. So
right. I just think this is one of those games where like Low the Truth, you agree with me as well. He is going to be the X factor. I mean, it's going to be Darius Williams lining up against him most of the time, and he's going to take his lunchbox. He's going to have a day against T. Higgins. I mean, T. Higgins is going to have a day against him. T. Higgins, I think, will probably have 100+ yards in this game. I legitimately think that.
I'm a huge Darius Williams guy, right? Like I like Darius Williams. I think he's pretty good.
I like him too, but I think he's gotten cooked the past few weeks. If I'm gonna be honest, I think Ayuk cooked him both times, and I think T. Higgins is just as good. Well, I think right now he's better than Ayuk. To be honest, I like T. Higgins a lot, though. I think T. Higgins is really good. And had it not been for Jamar Chase going crazy, T. Higgins would be the number one guy. You know, so
yeah.
I think because of Jalen Ramsey and my respect for him, Jamar Chase is going to have a decent day, but I don't think he's not going to top 100 yards unless he has like a big play. Then that could happen. But I do think that T. Higgins probably goes for 100+ because they're going to have to throw the ball a lot, in my opinion.
Yep, they do. And we've seen Joe Burrow drop back, a lot. And they do run the football, but we've seen Joe Burrow drop back a lot also. But I think, like I said, I think the Rams are going to get this one done 31. I'm contemplating either between 27 or 24, so I'm just going to put that out there. Either 31 Rams or 24 or 27 points for the Bengals. I think the Rams get it done. I think Sean McVay wins his first Lombardi trophy. But that basically the show. I mean, we went for an hour and 25 minutes. I appreciate you for joining me, Jamal. If you haven't already, go check out Jamal's podcast, Niner Talk with Jamal, Jasper and Jamal. The link is in the description. So subscribe to their channel if you haven't already. Niner Talk with Jasper and Jamal. Thanks for letting us know. I mean, I was checking the score. Let's just not talk about that. Let's just not talk about this. This is a football stream. We don't really talk about basketball that much. I'm not really worried about the Lakers. The Lakers. I mean, at a certain point, like the Lakers is kind of like boring watching Lakers games because they just get blown out sometimes really badly. And it's like, all right, like, okay, like this is, this like we're losing by 20 to like the Knicks. All right, like, okay.
Right. We're struggling against teams in the Eastern Conference that are in the playoffs right now.
Yeah. Right. And like that's a discussion for another day. But like I remember Stephen A. Smith like last couple. He's like, "What are the Knicks doing? The Knicks gotta get it together." And then like we see the Lakers getting blown out by like 20 to the Knicks. I'm like, oh my god, Stephen A. Like Stephen A. is throwing crap at the Knicks, and we're getting beat by the Knicks and like teams that aren't that great. We're getting blown out by them. So it's been tough as a Lakers fan this season, but like I said, if you haven't subscribed to Jamal's channel already, Niner Talk with Jamal and Jasper, go check that out already. Go check that out if you haven't
Please
already.
do.
The link is in the description. The link is in the description. Go subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Go get them to 100 subscribers. I think they have 85 subscribers.
Please.
So go get them to 100 subscribers tonight if you haven't already. And go follow Jamal on Twitter. The link is also in the description. And his co-host, Jasper, who unfortunately wasn't able to make the show tonight. Go to follow him on Twitter. Also, if you haven't already, his Twitter link is also in the description. If you're not subscribed to my channel already, please go do so. We got a lot of subscribers over the weekend, but I'm still trying to get to 600 subscribers. We're like 20 subscribers away. So if you haven't already
subscribed
to the channel, please go do so. It would be greatly appreciated. Follow me on Twitter, Amin the Dream 13. It's right here. It's right here. So if you haven't already followed me on Twitter, go do that. I appreciate you for joining me, Jamal. Go Niners, go Bengals, also go Bengals. But I appreciate everybody for watching. Go Niners, go Lakers, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.